There is a man in the Hebrew tradition who is said to have never died. He simply walked with God, and then he was gone. His name was Enoch, and the book that carries his name does not read like scripture. It reads like a report from someone who claims he was taken somewhere, taken up, out of the world he knew, and shown things, structures in the sky, storehouses of the stars, chambers where the winds are kept, regions with names, boundaries, gates, a cosmos that was organized, mapped, and far larger than the small human world he had left behind. And buried inside that report is a single unsettling implication, that the world we live in is not the whole of creation, that it is one region, one province, one piece of something much wider. So here is the question this entire investigation turns on. If Enoch really believed he had seen another world, where did he think that world was? Not the afterlife, not a poetic heaven, another world. Was it a physical place, somewhere out beyond the stars we can see? Was it another layer of reality sitting alongside our own, invisible, folded into the same space? Or was it something the ancient mind could hold that the modern mind has forgotten how to read? Because the strange thing is not that an old text mentions the heavens. The strange thing is how specific it gets, and how little of it fits the categories we use today. I'm not here to tell you Enoch predicted modern astronomy. I'm not going to claim a 3,000-year-old manuscript secretly encoded physics. That's the easy version of this story, and it falls apart the moment you look closely. I'm asking something harder. What did this man actually think he saw? And why does the answer refuse to stay simple? Before we go further into this, take a second and subscribe. This channel investigates the places where ancient texts and modern questions collide, and this is a story that only gets stranger the deeper we go. You'll want to be here for the rest of it. Now, let's start with the problem hiding inside a single word. World. We use it constantly. We think we know what it means, and that confidence is exactly the trap. When you and I say, another world, a set of images arrives automatically. A distant planet, a blue dot orbiting some faraway sun, maybe a parallel universe from a film, maybe a dimension stacked on top of ours, like a hidden floor in a building. Every one of those images comes from the last 400 years of human thought, telescopes, physics, science fiction, a vocabulary that did not exist when the Enochic material was written. So when we read an ancient description of another world and picture a planet, we may not be reading the text at all. We may be reading ourselves. This is the first thing you have to sit with. The people who produced these writings did not divide reality the way we do. They had no concept of a galaxy, no concept of space-time, no concept of a universe as an expanding volume filled with billions of separate suns. They didn't think in light years. They didn't think in dimensions. They thought in regions, realms, levels, domains that were near or far, not in miles, but in holiness, in order, in proximity to the divine. So the ancient sky was not empty space. It was populated, structured, layered. It had architecture, and that changes everything about how we should read a sentence like, "He was shown another place." Here's the tension. If their categories were completely different from ours, then maybe every modern interpretation of Enoch is a mistranslation, not of the words, but of the world view. We might be taking an ancient map and forcing it onto a modern grid it was never drawn for. But, and this is where it stops being simple, some of what Enoch describes is unnervingly precise for pure metaphor. The text associated with Enoch doesn't just wave at the heavens. In one section, often called the Book of the Luminaries, or the astronomical book, it tracks the movement of the sun and moon through a system of gates. It counts, it measures, It describes cycles and returns, and the rising and setting of lights with a kind of obsessive order. That's not the language of a dream. That's the language of someone trying to record a system. And systems imply something being observed, so we're left standing between two doors. Through one door, Enoch is a visionary using symbolic imagery, heaven as poetry, another world as a spiritual truth, never meant to be taken as geography. Through the other door, Enoch is describing something he believed was real, structured, and out there, a creation with parts he claimed to have traveled through. The honest answer is that the text itself does not slam either door shut, and that ambiguity is not a weakness in the story. It's the whole mystery. Because if it's purely symbolic, we can close the book. But if even part of it was meant literally, if Enoch genuinely believed there were other inhabited regions of creation beyond the human world, then a 3,000-year-old theist is making a claim that modern cosmology has only recently dared to whisper, that other worlds might not be a fantasy, that reality might be plural. Let me be careful here, because this is exactly where these stories usually go wrong. I am not saying the Book of Enoch describes a planet like Earth. I am not saying it predicted the multiverse. The text does not use those words, and anyone who tells you it does is adding something that isn't there. What I'm saying is narrower and stranger. The framework in Enoch already assumes plurality. It assumes the human world is not alone. It assumes there are places and beings and orders of existence that we do not normally see, and that a human being, under the right conditions, could be taken to witness them. That assumption is the thing worth investigating, not the decoration around it, so the question sharpens. When Enoch describes being carried beyond the familiar world, is he describing a journey through physical distance, out, and further out, past the edge of the sky? Is he describing a crossing into a different kind of reality that occupies no distance at all? Or is he describing an inner vision, a landscape of the spirit dressed in the imagery of stars and gates and fire? 3 interpretations, 3 completely different meanings, and they cannot all be right. Let's take those 3 interpretations seriously, one at a time. No ridicule, because each one, followed honestly, leads somewhere unexpected. Possibility 1, another physical world. In this reading, when Enoch is taken beyond, he is taken across real distance to a real place, a location that exists in the same creation as ours, but far from it, somewhere with its own ground, its own light, its own inhabitants. This is the interpretation modern readers reach for instinctively because it maps onto ideas we already have: exoplanets, distant civilizations, the possibility of life elsewhere. It feels scientific, but notice what it requires. It requires that Enoch's heavens were not spiritual at all, but spatial, that the gates and storehouses and regions he describes were physical locations you could, in principle, travel to. It turns a religious text into a travelogue. And here's the problem that immediately follows. If it's a physical place out among the stars, why does Enoch reach it not by traveling like a bird or a ship, but by being taken, lifted, carried, transformed? The text doesn't describe distance being crossed the way you'd cross a desert. It describes a change in the traveler. That detail quietly undermines the simplest version of Possibility 1, and it pushes us toward the second door, Possibility 2, another dimension, another level of reality. In this reading, the other world isn't far away at all. It's here, overlapping our own, occupying the same space, but hidden, separated from us not by distance, but by something harder to name. A veil, a threshold, a difference in kind rather than in location. This is why Enoch has to be transformed to see it. You don't travel to it, you cross into it. And this interpretation has a strong advantage. It explains why these realms are described as invisible yet present, why beings can move between them, why the boundary is a gate rather than a horizon. In this version, creation is layered, and the human world is one layer among several, all occupying the same reality but tuned to different frequencies of existence, if you'll allow the modern metaphor. But be honest about what this is. This is interpretation. The text does not say dimension. It does not say parallel plane. We are supplying a modern concept to explain an ancient image. The image fits it well, maybe suspiciously well, but the fit is ours, not Enoch's, which brings us to the third door, the one people least want to open, possibility 3, that none of it is a place, that the entire journey is visionary, symbolic, a spiritual reality expressed in the only vocabulary an ancient writer had: sky, fire, light, gates, thrones. In this reading, another world is not a location or a dimension. It's a truth about God and creation and human destiny, wrapped in cosmic imagery, because that was the language of the sacred. We're tempted to treat this as the boring answer, the deflating one, but it may be the most sophisticated. It says Enoch was never trying to describe astronomy or physics. He was describing meaning. And to read him as an early scientist is to insult the actual depth of what he was doing. So which is it? Physical world, hidden dimension, or sacred vision? Here's what should unsettle you. The text supports pieces of all three, and no honest reader can force it entirely into one. That's where most investigations would stop. A shrug, an unanswerable question. But this is exactly the point where something new walks into the story. Something that didn't exist when any of these interpretations were formed. Modern physics. And I want to be extremely careful about how I bring it in, because this is where these stories almost always break their own credibility. Modern physics does not prove the Book of Enoch. Let me say that as plainly as I can. There is no equation that validates an ancient vision, no discovery that confirms Enoch saw a real other world. Anyone claiming otherwise is selling you something. What modern physics does is stranger and more subtle. It gives us a vocabulary, a set of serious, mathematical, peer-reviewed ideas that sound uncomfortably like the questions Enoch's framework was already asking. Take the idea of other regions of reality. For most of scientific history, this was nonsense. There was one universe, and that was the end of it. But in the last several decades, that certainty has cracked. Some cosmological models, and I want to stress these are models, not confirmed facts, suggest our universe may be one of many. In certain versions of inflationary cosmology, the rapid expansion that formed our universe may still be happening elsewhere, budding off other universes we can never see or reach. Separate, causally disconnected, real, in the mathematics, but forever beyond our horizon. That's not Enoch, but look at the shape of the idea. Other worlds, real, existing, permanently hidden from us by a boundary we cannot cross. The shape rhymes. Then there's the interpretation of quantum mechanics some physicists take seriously, the many worlds idea, where reality constantly branches, and every possibility that can happen does happen in a world that splits off from ours. Again, not proof of anything ancient, but again, a serious scientific framework in which our world is one among countless others, or layered into the same reality, invisible to us. Physical worlds far away, hidden layers of reality overlapping our own. Those were interpretations 1 and 2, and modern physics, entirely independently, arrived at frameworks that resemble both. I need you to hold two thoughts at once here, because the whole investigation depends on it. This resemblance does not mean Enoch knew physics. It absolutely does not. Ancient people imagining a layered, plural cosmos and modern physicists modeling one are not the same act, and one did not predict the other. But the resemblance is not nothing either. It tells us that the human mind, ancient and modern, keeps arriving at the same suspicion from opposite directions, that the world we see may not be all there is. Enoch got there through vision. Physics gets there through mathematics, and they're staring at the same door from different sides of history. Quick pause. If this investigation is pulling you in, drop a comment and tell me which of the three possibilities you find most convincing: a physical world, a hidden dimension, or pure vision. I read them, and the disagreements in the comments are half the reason this channel exists. A like genuinely helps this reach other people asking the same questions. Now let's go somewhere the physics can't follow, because up to this point, we've talked about whether another world could exist. We haven't asked the harder thing: what would be on it? Imagine for a moment that one of these interpretations is true, that there really is another world, physical or hidden, or somewhere the categories break down. Enoch's framework doesn't leave it empty. His cosmos is crowded, populated, full of orders of beings going about their existence. So follow the thought. If another world exists in that framework, does it have ground beneath it, light above it, water, seasons, a history unfolding across time? Does it have living things? And if it has living things, does it have them? People, some version of us. This is the question the audience always circles back to, and it's the right instinct, because it's where the mystery stops being astronomy and becomes personal. Not is there another world, but is there another humanity? The text does not say this. I want that on the record. The Book of Enoch does not describe a mirror Earth populated by other people. Anyone who tells you it does is inventing. But the framework, the assumption that creation is vast and layered and full, leaves the door cracked open. And once it's open, one question walks straight through. Would they be like us? And that's where the Watchers finally enter the story. If you know the Book of Enoch for one thing, it's this: the Watchers, a group of heavenly beings who, in the narrative, descend to Earth. They take human wives, and crucially, they teach. They hand humanity knowledge it was not meant to have: metalworking and weapons, cosmetics and sorcery, the cutting of roots, the reading of signs. Forbidden instruction, and the result, in Enoch's telling, is corruption, violence, a world knocked off its intended course. That's the core of the Watcher's narrative. Your world received an intervention, and that intervention broke something. Now hold that beside the other world question, and watch what happens, because the text presents the Watcher's descent as an event, a specific one, something that happened to this world, which means logically it's possible to imagine a world where it didn't. The text never says this. This is interpretation. I'll keep being honest about that line, but it's interpretation the framework invites. If corruption entered our world through a particular event, then corruption is not built into creation itself. It's not inevitable. It's a wound, not a law. So picture the other world as the world that never received the wound. A humanity that was never handed the knowledge of weapons before it was ready, that never learned war as a craft. What would that even look like? Think it through, and it stops being a fantasy about aliens and becomes a mirror held up to us. Would such a world have armies? Would it need them? Would it have scarcity in the way we do? The hoarding, the taking, the endless preparation for someone else's violence? Would its technology have grown along a completely different branch, never bent toward destruction because it never had to be? Or, and this is the darker version, would it eventually arrive at the same ruin anyway, proving the corruption was never really the Watchers at all, but something inside the human heart that would have surfaced with or without them? That's the philosophical knife at the center of this. The other world isn't interesting because it's exotic. It's interesting because it asks whether we are the way we are because of what was done to us, or because of what we are. And Enoch, whatever he saw, seems to have believed the first, that our condition was caused, that it had a source, that it could, in principle, have been otherwise. But here, I have to stop the momentum, because there is a problem. And if I skip past it, everything I've built collapses under its own weight. The problem is this: everything we've done for the last several minutes is interpretation stacked on interpretation. And a skeptic, a good one, can take the whole structure apart with a few clean strikes. First, ancient cosmology is not astrophysics. When Enoch describes storehouses of stars and gates of heaven, the simplest explanation is not that he glimpsed the multiverse. It's that he was working with the shared cosmological imagery of his time and place: a flat earth, a solid sky, waters above, chambers for wind and snow. Ordinary ancient science, not hidden knowledge. Second, metaphor reads like description when you want it to. The human mind is a pattern-matching machine, and it will find prophecy in poetry every single time, if it's motivated to. The resemblance between Enoch's layered cosmos and modern multiverse models may live entirely in our heads. We went looking for the rhyme, so we heard it. Third, and this is the sharpest one, resemblance is not causation. Even if the shape of an ancient idea matches the shape of a modern theory, that match tells us nothing about whether either is true, and nothing about whether one informed the other. Two people can guess the same number for completely unrelated reasons. And fourth, nothing here has been demonstrated. Not another physical world, not a hidden dimension, not another humanity, not a cosmos structured the way Enoch describes. These are possibilities and interpretations. Not one of them is established fact. A serious skeptic can stand on that ground and say, "This is a beautiful old book. Imaginatively read, in nothing more." And they might be right. I want you to feel the full weight of that, because a mystery that can't survive its strongest objection isn't a mystery. It's a wish. So let's see if this one survives. Because there is a detail, and it doesn't prove anything. I need you to hear that first. But it changes the shape of the question. We keep asking whether Enoch predicted another universe. That's the wrong question, and the skeptic is right to attack it. But watch what happens when we stop asking it and ask the real one instead. Not, did Enoch predict modern physics? But what did Enoch believe existed beyond the world we know? Because on that question, the text is not vague at all. Enoch's writings consistently, insistently describe a creation with many parts, multiple heavens, regions with their own functions and their own inhabitants, places where the dead wait, sorted and separated, boundaries at the ends of the earth, storehouses, chambers, an architecture of reality in which the human world is unmistakably one section of something enormous. That is not interpretation. That is the plain shape of the material. Whatever Enoch meant, he did not imagine a small cosmos with humanity at its lonely center. He imagined a vast, structured, populated creation, and he placed us inside it as a single province. Now line up the three layers and look at how they overlap. What the text says, creation is vast and layered, and the human world is one part of it. What people interpret it to mean, those other parts could be other worlds, other dimensions, other beings, other versions of us. What modern physics allows as a hypothesis, not a fact, that reality may indeed be plural, that other regions of existence may lie forever beyond our reach. The skeptic was right that the second layer is where people overreach, but the first and third layers touch, quietly, without needing the overreach in the middle. An ancient man believed our world was one part of a much larger creation, and modern cosmology, from an entirely different direction, has stopped being sure he was wrong. That's what survives the objection, not proof. Something better. A question that got sharper instead of dissolving. And it's bigger than black holes, bigger than any single passage, because the impulse itself is the strange thing. Across the ancient world, again and again, human beings looked at the sky and refused to believe it was empty. They filled it with realms and levels and hidden regions. We tend to call that superstition, but maybe it was something else. Maybe it was the same suspicion physicists now formalize in mathematics, that the visible world is a surface, and something vaster sits behind it. Enoch is not the only voice that felt this, but he may be the one who reported it most concretely as a place he was taken, shown, and asked to remember. So where does that leave us? Not with an answer. I promised you I wouldn't fake one, and I won't. We cannot say another Earth exists. We cannot say Enoch saw a parallel universe. We cannot say the Watchers spared some other branch of humanity a corruption they brought to ours. Every one of those would be a claim the evidence doesn't support, and you should distrust anyone who makes it. But here is the thing I can't shake, and I don't think you'll be able to either. The strangest part of Enoch was never the sky machinery, or the gates, or the fire. It was the assumption, underneath all of it. The quiet, unargued certainty that our world is not the whole story, that it is one room in a house we have never fully seen, that creation is larger and stranger and more crowded than the small circle of light we live inside. 3,000 years later, we built telescopes and particle accelerators and mathematics of terrifying precision, and they led us from the opposite end of history back to the edge of the same suspicion. So maybe the question was never whether Enoch was right. Maybe the question is why, across every distance of time and knowledge, human beings keep arriving at the same impossible thought, that we are not alone in creation and that we never were. If this gave you something to think about, tell me in the comments where you land now. Did the mystery survive for you, or did the skeptic win? I want to know. Drop a like if you made it this far, because it tells me to keep making investigations like this one, and the video on your screen right now goes deeper into exactly this territory. Go watch it next, because Enoch's map didn't end here, and neither does the story.